we have to realize as leaders, our job is to identify problems and solutions. And we have to stop being surprised. When I was a high school principal, it was amazing to me how much energy my teachers wasted being surprised by things that weren't all that surprising, right? There's drama on the cheerleading team. Wait a minute, we have 37 15-year-old girls and they can't get along. Who saw that coming? Everybody else saw that coming.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Mr. Lyle Wells to learn about how to lead with confidence and accelerate your impact. So Lyle is the president of Integrus Leadership and the author of The 5-Day Leader, an insanely practical guide to relentless growth, ridiculous routines, and resilient relationships. As a leading voice for high-impact kingdom builders, he is captivating 100 audiences across the world every year. Lyle spent decades transforming athletic programs and serving as a leader in higher education. His passion on the basketball court and for his teams is matched only by his fervor for healthy ministry leaders who accelerate their kingdom impact. Welcome to the podcast, Leadership on the Rocks, Mr. Lyle. We're so glad to have you.
Bethany, we're thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for the great introduction. I wish my parents were here because I think my dad would have liked it and my mom would have believed it. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of it.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. So I have benefited so much from your work. You are the author, like I said, of The 5-Day Leader. I've read the book, but I've also been a part of your trainings. And I just love everything that you're putting out. You know, leaders are so overwhelmed with everything that they have to do. And you really help center us on what's most important and how do we simplify, especially that 5-day work week, so that we get the right things done and we're actually getting more of the right things done. So talk to us, like, what led you to write this book?
Well, the interesting genesis, I was on a flight and telling a guy about what I did. And he said, so who are the 5 most impressive leaders that you've ever worked with? And so, you know, I gave the guy 4 names and yours, Bethany, of course. And he said, you know, what was it that would make them, what made them so unique? And, you know, on the fly, I gave the best possible answer. But that night I sat down in my hotel room and really reflected on why do I consider these people to be such great leaders, and what is it about them? And I came down to 3 simple things. Number one, that relentless commitment to growth. Like, great leaders never, ever stop growing, because when you do, you create that leadership lid that John Maxwell talks about. The second thing is they built resilient relationships. Everybody talks about relationships, but you know, the goal really is to have a relationship with somebody that will stand the test of time. That will endure a global pandemic, that will endure a recession, that will endure a prodigal child in your home, wherever you're leading. And then the last one was just, I realized that great leaders never get tired of doing the same right things over and over and over again. And so that's where we came up with the idea of ridiculous routines. So that became the genesis. And then, you know, the second part of the book, you mentioned the 5-day work week. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Peloton. And one of the things I love about Peloton is they tell me exactly what to do, the rate I have to do it, and the resistance that I have to have when I'm doing it. And I thought, we respond so well to that. So let's give leaders 3 challenges a day that are going to grow their credibility and their influence, and challenge them to execute on those same behaviors every Monday, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Man, I have always believed that people thrive under structure, right? And, you know, thinking about, again, I've read the book and it's been fabulous, but I love your definition of leadership. You call it the 5-minute definition of leadership. And I actually wrote it down. So I want to make sure I get this right, because I want to quote you on this, because I literally was shouting amen and yes. And so you said, quote, leadership, like love, will ultimately be seen only through its actions. You can't say you love someone if you don't act lovingly. And you can't call yourself a leader if you don't act like one. And I have to say, I really think everybody that's listening is like, yes, amen. We have so many hypocrites that know about leadership, can talk about leadership, but they don't have the actions of leadership. And so how can we step into, like what you were saying, those three things? How can we serve people well besides those three actions that you were saying, that, resilient growth or relentless growth, ridiculous routines, and resilient relationships? Like, help us. How can we serve the people that we lead?
Well, I think there's two things that we have to own. Bethany, number one is we're ultimately responsible for our own behavior. We're not victims here. So, every behavior is something that's well within my circle of control. So I choose how I behave. And because I'm conscious of that, I want to choose behaviors that are going to impact people in a meaningful way. So, for example, you used love. I've been married for 34 years. One of my daily 5 is that I want to demonstrate at least 2 of the love languages to my wife every day. So acts of service and words. And the next day it might be quality time and physical touch. And the next day she might get a gift and more quality time. But leadership is ultimately about behavior. And so once we realize that it's not about us, at Integrus, we say, if it's not about others, it's broken. Then we look to others and go, what do they need right here and right now? And in the book, I discuss some research that I found from an anthropologist that shows that there are 5 universal needs: security, community, clarity, authority, and dignity. And if we're just walking around with those 5 front of mind and engaging with the people in our homes and the people in our churches and the people in our workplace, we can see where those needs are. And then when we meet them, again, it grows our credibility and our influence.
Yeah, I love that so much. And, the basic needs of people, leadership is about people, like you said. Can you repeat those 5 basic needs of people that we really have to tap into?
The need for security, not just physical, but also social and emotional. The need for community. I mean, we're all going to be connected to somebody. I say human beings are herd animals and we want good community. But Bethany, if I can't get good community, I'll take bad community because it's better than no community at all. There's the need for clarity, the need for authority. You said people thrive under structure. We all have a boss or a board that we report to. And what's interesting is I don't think people have innately authority issues. I think they have inappropriate authority issues, because if your boss or your board meets your needs, if they treat you well, you're going to work hard, you're going to come early, you're going to stay late, you'll probably show up on the weekends. And then the last one is dignity. Bethany, nobody wants to be average. Everybody has a dream in their heart, but on their way to pursue their dream, they get stuck or scared. They either run out of skill and we got to coach them up and get them new skills, or they run out of courage. And that's how we have to encourage them. I mean, you talked about equip and empower. Our message would be equip and encourage. Equip, give you the skills. Encourage, give you the courage.
It's so true. And I've said this, and this, I don't know how appropriate it is, but I really believe this. Nobody wants to suck at their job, right? Nobody shows up saying, I'm going to be the worst employee today. And I love what you said. And again, I know it sounds repetitive, but I think sometimes we have to hear it. I think Patrick Lencioni says we got to hear things 8 times before we really get it. And so you said people either run out of skill or what? Can you repeat those for us?
Or courage. They get scared. There's a gap where you've got to take a step of faith, and they're just afraid to do it. I mean, think about customer service. Like, there's no way that many people wake up in a bad mood, right? I mean, I travel, I get on 150 airplanes a year. I always look at the people down in baggage claim that have to deal with customers who have lost their baggage. And I think, is that not the hardest job on the planet? Because everybody you're going to gauge with is going to be in a bad mood. And 9 times out of 10, their response is to be as angry and as ugly as the customer is. But then you find that rare one that says, I don't want to be like this. I'm in control of my own behavior. And so I'm going to respond to their ugly with kindness. I'm going to serve them the best that I can. And so ultimately, again, it comes down to this idea that we are in control of our thoughts and our attitudes and actions as leaders, and that those thoughts, attitudes, and actions are likely to create a response. Now, the other thing, Bethany, you were a school leader. I mean, you led thousands of high school students. You know this. You can treat them completely appropriately, be mature, be respectful, and get just the exact opposite back. But their response is not your responsibility. And that's one of the other key things that I teach leaders is you do you. How they respond to you is not your responsibility. All you can control is your behavior.
It is so true. And I got to tell you, people have heard this a lot, school administrators especially, we break up physical fights. We break up a lot of verbal fights. We've been cussed out a lot. And you're so right. I can't even tell you how responding with love of this moment is bigger than the way that you're reacting emotionally. And I'm going to tap into that. I have to tap into that greater source of my relationship with Jesus and my love for people so that I don't react and be reciprocal and match their same emotional level of anger or whatever it is. And so how do we not react, but step into that response of choosing our behavior? Because I'm going to be honest, it's hard. Leaders deal with nothing but negativity, right? Problems, conflicts, constraints, and it can wear on you. And I think that's where the devil can slip in, with, hey, it's okay if you react badly just this once, but just one bad reaction, you can lose so much trust in that relationship. So talk to us, how do we step into those hard things and have the behavior of a leader?
Oh, such a good question. So I'm going to give you two quick things. Number one, something that's really helped me, Bethany, is this. The realization that every human being is an object of the Lord's affection. That parent who's across from you right now saying the most ugly, vile, irrational things, Jesus loves that person as much as he loves me. And I'm called to love them too. So that's number one. But number two is this, and you've tapped into something really, really important, Bethany. We have to realize as leaders, our job is to identify problems and solutions. And we have to stop being surprised. When I was a high school principal, it was amazing to me how much energy my teachers wasted being surprised by things that weren't all that surprising, right? There's drama on the cheerleading team. Wait a minute, we have 37 15-year-old girls and they can't get along. Who saw that coming? Everybody else saw that coming, right? A 17-year-old boy is doing something stupid, right? He's driving his truck on the sidewalk. Why would he do that? Because his brain isn't fully formed, because somebody bet him $1. I don't know. The job of a 17-year-old boy is make bad decisions. And all of us did that job really well when we were 17.
So true.
Stop being surprised. Somebody's sideways and has a different agenda than everybody else at the church. There's 425,000 churches in America. It happens. There's somebody that's disgruntled at your business and you're paying them well and you're treating them great. It happens. They've got pain from somewhere else in their life, and now they're projecting it onto you. So if people walked away from one thing from this podcast, maybe it would be stop being surprised. There are going to be challenges and there are going to be problems. If leadership was easy, everybody'd be good at it. But it's not, and there are very few elite leaders. And that's the goal of your work, and the goal of our work is to help to create more of those kinds of leaders.
Absolutely. I love that. And I've never heard that before. Stop being surprised. And it's so true. Our pastor specifically says, hurt people. And we love to wear our offense. As leaders, you've got to not be offended. Hurt people. That's a fact. Like you were saying, and that is so spot on, of just high school kids are going to make bad decisions because their brain isn't fully formed. People in chaos during the pandemic, they're going to be, extra full of anxiety and fear of the future and all of those things. And so don't be surprised at that, but also guard yourself from always being offended at things too, and then writing people off. I firmly believe that whenever somebody misbehaves badly, one, you got to step into the conversation. They've got to become aware that that behavior was not appropriate. So that accountability piece. But as the leader, it's also your job to reach out and reconcile that relationship if it can be, there's some hard times where, yes, you have to let an employee go, but if the employee is going to stay, you need to step out and reconcile, because they're in fear and doubt of, well, what's my place now? What do they think of me now? And that can stay very negative if you don't reach out and get over that offense and kind of bridge that relationship. What do you think about a situation like that?
Well, remember this, Bethany, I've always taught our children that money and alcohol just make people more of what they already were. If you're angry and you get drunk, now you're an angry drunk. If you're selfish and all of a sudden you have a lot of money, you're just selfish with a lot more money. Money and alcohol just make you more of what you already are. And I would say anxiety is the third thing. I mean, that's what we saw in the pandemic. The anxiety of the pandemic just made people more of what they already were. People who were compassionate and kind, the pandemic, they were more compassionate and more kind. People who were angry and ugly, people who were violent or divisive, you saw that get elevated during the pandemic or when people get anxious. So, my thing is this, we say, you've been in our workshops, we say, we don't talk about good or bad. Let's just talk about better. How can we make this situation better? And so as a leader, I always focus on what's the next right thing, right? I've got an employee who's struggling. What's the next right thing? Go and have a conversation with that person. How many leaders, Bethany, are talking to everybody else about the struggling person at the school or in the company or at the church, but nobody goes and talks to them? Yes. And so the next right thing, go and talk to them. You have a little bit of friction with your husband. I know you guys are going through a transition, moving. Yeah. I know in my house, when we move, mom and dad can kind of get a little tense. You know what? I say something that I shouldn't have said, or with a tone that I shouldn't have used. What's the next right thing? Go and apologize. Yeah. And so I always challenge leaders, think about the next right thing. All right. And that gets you back on course. Because here's what happens. We don't end up in the ditch with one bad decision. It's this decision multiplied by that decision that takes you upside down and in the ditch.
You have said so many things. I can't wait to see the transcript of this because it's so quotable. You said one bad decision doesn't end you up in the ditch, and it's so true, but we wear the weight of that so often that we can lose course and we just keep going down that, and we can lose sight of our priorities. Speaking of priorities, again, you're so quotable. You say a priority isn't a priority until it's resourced. And that's so true. I think so often in leadership, we talk about how important culture is, but if we're not pouring into the culture of our team and our organization, it's not really a priority. Just because you say it doesn't make it so. So can you talk to us? How do we actually step into what we call our priorities a priority?
Well, first off, Bethany, let me affirm you for using the correct version of the word.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Singular, priority. The definition of priority is one above all others. So really, when you think about somebody who's using the term priorities, I mean, it's really an oxymoron. You can't have multiple priorities. So I love the way that you're using that word. So we look at it this way. If something truly is a priority, it's going to get your best people, it's going to get a sufficient amount of time, and it's going to get the resources that it needs. So, when a church says, hey, we love families, families matter here, kids matter here. Are you putting your best people? Are you giving an appropriate amount of time to plan your children's programming? And are there resources available to it? Again, what we'll tap into our shared experiences as high school administrators. I remember one time I was doing an accreditation visit. When I was a high school principal, I was visiting another school to endorse them for accreditation. And when I drove up, they had this beautiful sign, and it said, "Home of Scholars and Champions." And being an educator who's also an athlete, I just loved that. But then the next day, I always ask, let me see your budget, because I'll know what matters. I'll know what matters in your household. Let me see your budget. I'll know what matters in your business. Let me see your budget. And I looked at their budget, and their English budget, this was a 4-year high school, their English budget was $3,500 for materials. and the football budget was $350,000. And I said, well, wait a minute, that signs scholars and champions. We probably need to flip that because you're a lot more interested in being a champion than you are about creating scholars.
And that's so true. So true. Go back to the cliche, you got to put your money where your mouth is. If you say something, that's where your money needs to go. And I know in the Bible, it talks about where your heart is, your treasure's there also, your treasure's where your heart is.
Well, I mean, Bethany, just think about this. The work that you and I do in developing others, how many organizations truly make that a priority? They'll all say we want to develop leaders. They'll all say we want to see our people do their best work. Like, my heart is that everybody at Integrus is doing their dream job. And I'll resource anything I have to help them do what they dream of doing at the highest level they possibly can, because it serves our partners well, right? And it creates great retention and an amazing culture. Yeah. But so many people will say their people matter, and then they won't invest anything into their development, whether it's you doing it yourself by investing time and some resource or outsourcing it. So many people absolutely refuse to do that.
Man, it's so true. And this is, you in your book, you kind of have it in two parts. You have the first half and you have the second half. Again, you played basketball, coached collegiate basketball. And I love that. And I think that so far in this podcast, we've been talking about the first half. It's about the heart. It's about the behaviors. It's about the priority and what you're doing with your resources and all of that. So let's kind of go to the second half and talk about, okay, if I have my heart aligned to what I know I'm doing, I'm serving people, it is about others. It's not about me. You still have to execute. You still have to get some things done. So can you switch to the true 5-day leader and kind of walk us through, give us a framework. If you can just give us a sneak peek of your book of how do we take the heart that we're now building. And again, we're not going to be perfect, right? We're going to make that bad decision, but it doesn't derail us completely. But how do we actually execute and get some things done? Can you walk us through the 5 days?
Yeah. There's a myth that, leaders move mountains. And we know that God can move mountains, but, I grew up in Colorado, and during my childhood, they dug the Eisenhower Tunnel. They literally tunneled through a mountain so that the people of Denver could get to the ski areas without having to go over 14,000 foot mountain passes. Well, how did they do that? They did that one shovel full of dirt at a time. They jackhammered one rock. They got one scoop from a front loader at a time. And so there's this power in what I call compounding behaviors. Mm-hmm. So, today is a Tuesday. It's Tough Tuesday. And so one of the challenges on Tough Tuesday is address an issue that you've thought more than once about. Challenge somebody that might be underperforming or an attitude that you're a little bit concerned about. So, is doing that once going to change the culture of your family or your organization? No, but there's power in the compounding behaviors. If I deal with the one thing, the one attitude, the one performance issue, the one underperformer, every single Tuesday, if I have one conversation, that means I'm having 50 a year. And that moves the dial, right? Tough Tuesday, we say do one more of everything that you're going to do. I'm looking in my office at my whiteboard, and I wrote this morning, every email, every text, every sales contact, no matter what. It's Tough Tuesday. I've been on the road for 2 weeks. So I've got an inbox that is full. I've got some texts that I haven't gotten back to people yet. And then I have sales contacts because I've been meeting people for the last 2 weeks at conferences. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them tonight before I go to bed, no matter what. Now, doing that today, is that going to change the game? No. But if I attack every Tuesday this way for the rest of the year, then the game is going to change. So it's this power of compounding behavior. I say in the book, one run, you're going to feel good. But you run 3 miles a day, 5 days a week, your health changes, your outlook changes, your energy level changes. That's the goal of the 5-day framework of the second half of the book.
Man. And it's so good. And I think, and I love the way, being an educator, again, you differentiate for us. You're like, okay, here's 3 tracks. So start here. If you don't know where to start with this thing. And it's literally just one simple task that we can do for each of those days of the week. And then you also give us the second level and the third level of how to just step more into that. And I think that that's what we need. So often we paint with such a broad brush on everything that we have to step into all of these situations that we're feeling and saying, okay, like you said, number 1, what's the next right thing to do? But number 2, I don't need to feel the weight of trying to do it all. Just take the next best step and be consistent in that. And you're going to build that momentum. And it's just so good. I thank you for giving us that structure. Again, I truly believe people thrive under structure, whether it's, again, you and I've been in education. So kids definitely thrive in structure, but adults do as well, because it takes away the anxiety of security, of the fear of chaos and all those things. And that's what you've given leaders in your book. And I'm just so thankful for it. So I appreciate it.
Well, my favorite Peloton instructor, he says, I make suggestions, you make decisions. Oh. And, he says, hey, this next climb, I want you at this level. But remember, if you need to back off, back off. I make suggestions, you make decisions. And that's what I want people to feel from the book. I mean, look, you're not going to check all 3 boxes every day. The goal is not good or bad. It's just better. I'm also a bivocational senior pastor. Literally yesterday, we had a snake in our conference room. I mean, we finished our Monday morning team meeting. We all go back to our offices. An hour later, there's this blood curdling scream. And I mean, it's in our church is in a rural area, and somehow this guy got under a door, or we'd left a door open. And, but that was a pretty disruptive thing for about 90 minutes. I mean, it sounds crazy that a 2-foot snake cost everybody 90 minutes of work, but there was a lot of standing on chairs. You touch it. I'm not going to touch it. Is it poisonous? I don't know. You're going to have snakes in the conference room once in a while. Mm-hmm. So that day, maybe you got one thing or you didn't get anything done. That's the beauty. Scripture tells us his mercies are new every day. And so every day is a new day. I talk about in the book, don't wait till January 1st. Make every day New Year's Day and attack the challenges with that same energy.
So good. I love that. Everybody encounters snakes that can jump up and bite you and kind of
absolutely
your day. Oh, it's so true in the school system.
And some of those snakes have arms and legs, and they're called people.
Sometimes. So, in kind of thinking everything we've talked about, and it's been so good, what are some takeaways that our listeners can literally go and apply? So can you kind of take everything that we've talked about and just give us some action items, give us some takeaways?
Well, I would say a couple of things. Number one, when we think about living your life under the idea of living by priority, one of the real practical things is, Bethany, I teach leaders to have a daily 5. What are the 5 essential things that you're going to do every day? For me personally, I'm going to abide. I'm going to be with the Lord. I'm going to love. I'm going to express my love for my team, my family, my wife. I'm going to sweat every day. I mean, I'm not a great athlete anymore, but the healthiest man I've ever met is in his late 70s, and that's his fitness plan. Break a sweat every day. Go for a bike ride. Go play pickup basketball. Get on a Peloton, whatever. Yeah. Number 4 is teach. I mean, you're wired to be a teacher. I'm wired to be a teacher. So I'm going to teach or write every single day. And then number 5 is advance. I'm not content leaving things where they are. So I'm going to always try to move a person or a project to that next step. So define your 5. You have a daily 5. I think the other thing is that we don't do this alone. So, get the book, look at those behaviors, modify them if you have to. I mean, if you're a salesperson, turn it into the 5-day salesperson. If you're a teacher, turn it into the 5-day teacher. Again, I didn't write the book because I'm the smartest guy on the planet. I wrote the book to help average, hungry leaders like you and I. But start to build a framework of doing the same right things every day. And then the last thing I would just say is give yourself grace. We're not perfect. as leaders, but we can always be better. And so stop comparing, stop looking to the left and to the right about what other people are doing. Focus on what God's called you to do. Be the very best you can at it. Focus on your circle of control.
Absolutely. I always talk about progress over perfection. And I say that not always to other people, but I verbally say it to remind myself.
My quote, Bethany, so you say progress over perfection. Mine is similar, but we challenge our team. We say often wrong, never in doubt. Look, you regret the things you don't do. So I've got a young leader here with me today, a young man that I have the privilege of working with. And my first conversation with him was this: I'll pay tuition. Cooper, you go out and learn by making mistakes. You try things, and if it doesn't work, you've learned a lesson, and I don't mind paying for that. I don't pay welfare. I don't pay people to sit around and overthink and overanalyze. Be often wrong, but never in doubt. Be bold. I think God honors the bold, and you can't baby step your way to boldness.
That is amazing. I'm going to have to chew on that one for a long time. So often wrong, never in doubt. I cannot thank you enough for just all of your bits of wisdom. And I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody. The whole podcast has been great ideas of what we need to step into. You kind of calling us out of status quo to make progress, be better, right? So what is one poor decision? Let's do the opposite. What's one thing that we shouldn't be doing? One poor decision every leader should avoid.
I think the poorest decision a leader can make is to look for excuses or reasons why they failed or blame other people. I mean, that just, you end up rehearsing your own pain. And, again, we serve a God who's quick to forgive. And once he forgives, he forgets. That's what scripture tells us. And so, they say experience is the best teacher. I don't believe that. I think experience is a great teacher. Learn from it and move on, but also learn from the experiences of others. And if you're always busy being a victim and justifying your own failure, you're never humble enough to go and say, Bethany, teach me about leadership. I've been on your website. I'm downloading your free resources because you're a leader that I've met and been very, very impressed with. And so I would say, stop making excuses, stop blaming other people, own your own growth journey, and be humble enough to go and learn from others. You asked for one, there's like four. My apologies.
It's all good though. We need it all, right? Because every day is a battle and a struggle, and we've got to remind ourselves of these things. So thank you so much. So where can listeners go to learn more about you and your work? Where can they, one, get the book and then follow you on social media? So let us know. Where do we go?
Well, the book's available at Amazon and, all those, barnesandnoble.com, all of those things. Okay. Integrus.org is our website if you're interested in the work that we do. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's at Lead with Lyle. And again, just encourage people to reach out. And I think that's one of the myths, Bethany. I think you've overcome that. And I know Integrus has. Our heart is to cross the road. So people think, oh, it's so expensive to have a coach, or, I don't. What's expensive? Not having a coach, continuing in your same failures and not having a voice call out the best that's in you. I think that's way more expensive than the few dollars it costs to have a coach. So I'd encourage them to reach out to you or to us because ultimately our heart is to serve leaders so they can have greater impact. And, we're all on a rescue mission. We're rescuing, people from hell. We're rescuing our communities from compromise. We're rescuing our churches from complacency. We've all got great calls on our life to lean in and make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast today. Again, Lyle Wells with Integrus. He's also the author of the 5-Day Leader. And guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2b. Now teach these truths to other trustworthy people who will be able to pass them on to others.